Kia ora e te whānau. My name is Beau-Qay. Welcome to my channel Wairoa Wellness. I'm speaking from Ōtepoti, Dunedin in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Today I want to be talking about duality and polarity. I may do another one or two videos on this subject, but this one is more of a basic concept of duality and polarity. So what is duality and what is polarity? We hear these terms floating around in conversation in spiritual circles, but do we really take the time to understand what those terms mean? And not just understand what those terms mean, but to allow the understanding to shift our mindset so that we can embody the understanding. Because once we can embody that understanding, it's very transformational. It shifts our perspective of everything. And it takes effort. So anyway, so we look at the world and we see opposites. We see light and dark, good and bad, hot and cold, positive and negative. And we assume that these opposites are separate. We're actually brought up in schools to learn that things are opposite, things are separate. Don't we? That they are two different things. But are they? Duality suggests separation. It suggests that there are two fundamentally separate forces divided in contradiction, in opposition to each other. Polarity, however, is different. Polarity describes two ends of the same spectrum, not two separate things, but one thing expressing itself in contrast. If you imagine a line in front of you, at one end of the line is darkness, and at the other end of the line is light. You can imagine adjusting the brightness level of your screen along the one line. We tend to think that they are separate forces, but if you look closer, it is just one line. It is not light and dark. It is just one line. Darkness and light exist on the same spectrum. They are not two different substances. They are simply two expressions of the same continuum. What changes along that line when you imagine yourself changing the darkness to the light? You're switching it up. What's changing? Intensity, degree, frequency. If you slowly begin increasing light along the dark end of the spectrum, what happens? It becomes less dark and less dark and less dark until eventually it becomes what we call light. So was darkness ever separate from light? Or was it light at a lower intensity? Cold and heat can be works in the same way. Cold is not the opposite of heat as a separate force. It is simply less heat. Silence is not the opposite of sound. It is simply less sound, right? Less vibration. Over and over, what we call opposites are actually variations along the one spectrum. This is polarity. In Te Ao Māori, there is the story of Ranginui and Papatuanuku, and Sky Father and Earth Mother. They were once together, held tightly together. There was no space between them. There was no separation. There was only darkness until their son Tāne Mahuta came along and pushed them apart. And when he did, light entered the world. The darkness wasn't destroyed. It doesn't say one was better than the other. One was good, one was bad. They simply existed, and light and space was introduced. Contrast became visible. Experiences, expressions of variation became possible. And we could also look at the Genesis creation account. You don't have to be religious to look at this account. The Genesis account holds its origins in Egypt. It also describes something similar. In the beginning, light is separated from darkness. And when you look at the wording, light is separated from darkness, it implies that before there was no space in there. Again, separation, but not as separate forces. Rather, space to express itself in various forms of expression, experience, to have experience along the same spectrum. So there was distinction, and across the cultures we see this pattern. There is unity first, and then separation, and through that separation, experience becomes possible. Maybe duality in its meaning of how we understand duality and the true separation to separate forces, maybe that is a concept of the human mind, to allow the human mind to categorize its reality. Because the mind divides. The heart does not divide. The mind divides. It labels everything. It likes to compartmentalize and put into boxes everything. Everything. It likes to say, this is good, that goes in the good box, that goes in the bad box, that goes in the ugly box, that goes in the good looking box, and we like to label everything. But at a deeper level, everything exists within the one field, one continuum, one source. There is polarity, there are gradients, and there are degrees of expression, but there is not absolute separation. When I speak about frequency, we discussed about frequency. That's the change as you're going from dark to light. The change is simply frequency. When I speak about frequency, it is not something abstract or woo-woo. It's actually basic physics. Everything is made up of atoms. The sofa, this desk, this plant, this painting, me, you, the animals, the trees, everything is made up of atoms. So everything is made up of energy. And that energy vibrates at frequency. So everything we see is vibrating at its own frequency. I'm vibrating at a frequency, you are. Even the furniture that we think is dead, it is not dead, it is vibrating at a frequency. It is energy. So everything in the physical world operates in degrees of movement and intensity. Light exists on a spectrum. Sound exists on a spectrum. Energy expresses itself in variation. Everything we see around us is made up of energy, is a way that energy has expressed itself in variation. This energy has expressed itself in variation as a sofa. This energy has expressed itself in variation as a monstera plant. This energy has expressed itself in a way of a beautiful painting. It's quite amazing, isn't it? So when we describe darkness as a lower frequency, what we're really describing is density and contraction. reduced expression. You think of someone who is going through something difficult. They're going through a period of experiencing sadness, experiencing depression maybe, and you notice their energy is condensed, reduced expression. They don't want to go anywhere, they don't want to talk to anyone, they don't want to do anything. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got on an incredible day and everything's going well in their life, their energy is open, there is more, there is increased expression, increased variation of being able to express their energy. They are open, they are sharing with everyone, they're laughing, they want to go out, go running, go dancing, go meet with their friends. So darkness is not an opposing force, it is light at another end of the spectrum. Condensity, contraction, versus openness and expansion. This perspective, it does not deny suffering, it does not excuse harm, it simply shifts how we understand opposition. Instead of two forces battling each other in opposition of each other, completely separate from each other, we begin to see one continuum expressing itself in different degrees. So what is duality? Just to close this video, what is duality? Perhaps it is a mental framework, a way the human mind divides reality. Doesn't actually exist. What is polarity? It is the spectrum through which reality expresses itself. And beneath both ends of that spectrum, there is oneness, not two, just one. Kia ora.